Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that after being severely bitten by a rabid dog, 9-year-old Joseph Meister traveled to Paris with his mother to be the first person to receive Louis Pasteur's rabies vaccine? Learn how Pasteur became one of the world's most important chemists who developed the process of pasteurization and vaccines against rabies. Discover that when Joseph Meister was older, Pasteur hired him to give tours at his Deluxe laboratory, and that after Pasteur's death, Meister worked as the caretaker of Pasteur's tomb at the Institut Pasteur in Paris.
I want you to imagine the sheer terror of being handed a medical death sentence in the 19th century.
Oh, it's unimaginable today.
Right, because if you get a terrible diagnosis today, you at least have, the comfort of modern medicine. You have targeted antibiotics, ventilators, palliative care. But back then, a diagnosis of certain diseases wasn't just a physical death sentence. It was a psychological horror.
Absolutely.
And there was perhaps nothing more terrifying, nothing that struck more ice into the veins of a parent than the word rabies. You just knew the inevitable, agonizing end that was coming for your child.
Yeah, the inevitability of rabies in 1885 is, it's almost impossible for us to grasp today. There was no maybe.
Right.
With most diseases back then, you had a glimmer of hope, right? Like a fever might break, an immune system might miraculously fight off an infection. But rabies did not operate on hope.
Yeah.
Once the virus took hold, fatality was 100%.
Yeah.
You were simply watching the clock run out before the horrific neurological symptoms began.
And so, in today's deep dive, you are sitting right here at the table with us as we unpack one of the most critical moments in the history of medicine. We're looking at the very first time a human being was administered a rabies vaccine.
It's an incredible story.
It really is. And our sources today contain historical records, personal quotes, and frankly profound moral truths regarding the life of Louis Pasteur and a young boy named Joseph Meister. And we are going to present all of this, the scientific history and the spiritual realities, as absolute fact.
Because it is.
Exactly. So let's ground this in the inciting incident because it really illustrates the raw panic that set this entire historical event in motion. July 4th, 1885, Alsace, France. 9-year-old Joseph Meister is walking alone when he is viciously attacked by a rabid dog.
And the historical record details a brutal, sustained mauling. The dog physically threw the boy to the ground and bit him in 14 different places across his hand, his legs, and his thighs.
14 places. Wow.
Yeah. The physical trauma alone was devastating for a child, but the real threat, the invisible one, was entering his nervous system through those deep puncture wounds.
And it takes 12 hours, 12 agonizing hours before a local doctor even treats the boy. And the treatment is essentially torture.
It really was.
The doctor takes carbolic acid and seals these 14 open lacerations. I mean, he is heavily swabbing a corrosive chemical directly into raw wounds.
Right, because carbolic acid essentially burns the surrounding tissue in an attempt to disinfect it. It is agonizing.
I can't even imagine.
But the deeper tragedy is that this doctor, despite subjecting the boy to this immense pain, he knew it wouldn't cure rabies. He was just trying to sanitize the localized area. He had absolutely no mechanism to stop a virus that was already on the move inside the boy's body.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you are Mrs. Meister, you watch your 9-year-old get mauled, you endure the horror of watching a doctor burn his wounds with acid, and then you are told to just, take him home and wait for him to die?
Basically, yeah.
That failure of local medicine is what drives her next move. She bypasses everything local. She hears rumors of a scientist in Paris who is working on a cure for animals, and she packs up her son, travels to Paris, and shows up unannounced at the laboratory of Louis Pasteur.
Which is wild. She made a purely mathematical calculation. The traditional medical system had nothing to offer her except, a waiting room for death.
Right. It's like someone today bypassing a hospital emergency room to beg a university lab researcher for a completely unapproved experimental serum.
That's exactly what it was like. A rumor of an unproven cure in a Parisian laboratory was infinitely better than the absolute certainty of a grave. She forced a confrontation between a mother's desperation and the absolute cutting edge of 19th century science.
Just how uniquely desperate did a situation have to be in 1885 to drive a mother to do this?
Oh, completely unprecedented.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand the enormous legal and ethical predicament that showing up at Pasteur's lab created.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right, because we assume the great pioneers of medical treatments were all physicians. But Pasteur was a chemist. He was a physicist. He had zero legal authority to practice medicine on a human being.
So he's essentially acting like a modern, unlicensed biohacker at this moment.
Exactly. And if he administers an experimental substance to a child, and that child dies, Pasteur isn't just a failed researcher. He is legally liable for manslaughter. The scientific community could entirely ostracize him.
He loses everything.
He would risk his freedom and his entire life's work.
I have to push back here, though, because if a rabies bite is a guaranteed death sentence, like we just said, why is the liability so terrifying? If the boy dies, everyone knows the rabid dog killed him, right?
Well, normally, yes. But because of the nature of the treatment itself, it's complicated. Pasteur's proposed vaccine was not like a synthetic chemical. It was the rabies virus itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if Joseph dies after Pasteur injects him, an autopsy or a symptom check is going to show that the boy died of rabies.
And people would ask questions.
Exactly. The courts, the public, the medical establishment, they would ask, did the dog kill the boy, or did the rogue chemist inject a child with a lethal virus and murder him?
That is a terrifying position to be in. If this goes wrong, he goes down in history as a chemist who poisoned a child.
Which means Pasteur needs serious medical cover. So he consults 2 licensed physicians, brings them into his lab, and shows them the boy's injuries.
And what do they say?
Well, these doctors look at the severity of the 14 bites and the timeline, and they go on the record stating that, quote, something should be done, and fast. They even physically stay in the room for the first dose to provide Pasteur with a shield of medical authority.
Wow. They really stuck their necks out, too.
They did. They understood the immense liability, but they also understood the biological stakes. The virus was already in Joseph's body. The clock was ticking.
Let's talk about those biological stakes and the actual substance they were about to inject. Because Pasteur had been producing this experimental vaccine by injecting the rabies virus into rabbits, right? Letting the virus replicate in their central nervous systems and then harvesting their spinal cords.
He was using the rabbits as living incubators.
Yeah.
Rabies doesn't replicate effectively in the blood. It attacks and travels along the nervous system.
Okay, that makes sense.
So to grow large, predictable quantities of the virus, Pasteur used the spinal cords of rabbits. But he didn't just harvest them. He hung these infected spinal cords in sterile flasks to dry out over a period of days.
Wait, really? Why dry them out? How does desiccating a spinal cord actually create a vaccine?
It comes down to structural integrity. A virus is a fragile biological mechanism. It requires a moist, hospitable host environment to survive and replicate efficiently.
Okay.
By exposing the infected tissue to dry air over a specific number of days, Pasteur was intentionally damaging the virus. The longer the spinal cord dried, the more the virus degraded. It became attenuated, weakened.
So it's still rabies, but it's like a beat-up version of it?
Right. It was still structurally intact enough for an immune system to recognize it as a threat, but it was too damaged to rapidly reproduce and cause the disease.
And he had actually proven this concept in animals, hadn't he? Prior to Joseph Meister, Pasteur had successfully treated 50 dogs that were sick with rabies, along with sheep and other livestock.
Yes, 50 dogs. He knew the mechanism worked on dogs, but he had never, not a single time, attempted this on a human being.
Which is a massive leap.
The leap from a dog's physiology to a human child's physiology is massive. There was no guarantee the human immune system would respond the same way, or that the dosage levels were safe. We actually have his own words from the historical record, which perfectly capture the moral weight of this moment.
What did he say?
He wrote, quote, "Since the death of the child appeared inevitable, I resolved, though not without great anxiety, to try the method which had proved consistently successful on the dogs."
Not without great anxiety. I mean, he is standing there with a syringe full of rabbit spinal cord extract, staring at a 9-year-old boy. The legal hurdle is cleared, his moral decision is made, and on July 6th, just 2 days after the dog attack, they begin.
Yeah, the first injection goes into a fold of skin in Joseph's upper abdomen.
And this initiates a grueling 3-week medical ordeal.
It was an incredibly intense regimen, 13 injections over 21 days.
And the most terrifying detail is the protocol itself. Each of these 13 doses came from progressively less dried and therefore more rabid rabbit spinal cords.
Exactly.
The first injections were the highly weakened, desiccated versions. But day by day, Pasteur is intentionally injecting the boy with stronger, more virulent strains of rabies. By the end of the 3 weeks, he is injecting Joseph with fully active, deadly rabies.
Yes, he is.
This sounds like trying to put out a fire by throwing slightly larger matches at it every day. How does this not just kill the patient faster?
That analogy actually highlights exactly what Pasteur was doing, but instead of the fire being the disease, the fire is the boy's immune system.
Oh, I see.
When the rabid dog bit Joseph, it deposited a wild, highly aggressive virus into his tissue. But rabies is insidious. It hides in the nerve tissue, traveling slowly up to the brain, often avoiding detection by the body's natural defenses until it's too late.
So the body doesn't even know it's under attack.
Precisely. By injecting the highly weakened rabbit virus into the boy's abdomen, Pasteur was forcing the immune system to wake up. He was handing the body a degraded mugshot of the rabies virus.
Such a great way to put it.
The immune system looks at this weakened invader and easily defeats it, creating antibodies in the process. The next day, Pasteur throws a slightly larger match at the immune system, a slightly stronger virus. The immune system, now primed, fights it off again, building even more antibodies.
He is artificially accelerating the boy's immune response. What must that have been like psychologically for Pasteur?
It is a microscopic race. The wild virus from the dog bite is slowly climbing Joseph's nervous system toward his brainstem. Meanwhile, Pasteur's daily injections are training the boy's immune system to build a massive army of antibodies.
It's all a gamble.
The entire gamble of those 3 weeks was whether the artificially stimulated antibodies could intercept and destroy the wild virus before it reached the brain.
Which is a devastating burden for Pasteur to carry. Every single day, she has to wake up and wonder if today's dose is the one that overwhelms the boy's system. He is intentionally bringing this child closer and closer to a lethal dose.
The historical accounts note that Pasteur suffered from terrible insomnia during this period. He was pacing the halls at night.
I'm not surprised.
To manage the terror, he instituted a strict safety protocol. Before administering that day's dose to Joseph, Pasteur would first inject it into a healthy rabbit. He needed immediate, visible proof that the specific formulation wasn't inherently lethal before he put it into a human child.
It is a perfect blend of scientific rigor and sheer medical improvisation. And after 3 weeks, after 13 agonizing injections, the impossible happens.
It really does.
Louis Pasteur announces that Joseph Meister has successfully developed an immunity to the rabies virus. The boy doesn't develop symptoms, he fully recovers. They defeated the undefeated killer.
A chemist and a boy from Alsace altered the trajectory of human history.
The survival of Joseph Meister is incredible on its own, but we have to look at how this single 3-week period unlocked the rest of Pasteur's legendary contributions to science.
Oh, absolutely. Saving Joseph was the ultimate validation of the germ theory of disease. Before this, the exact nature of how diseases spread was, highly debated.
Really? Still debated at that point.
Yeah, many scientists still believed in spontaneous generation or miasma theory, the idea that diseases were caused by bad air. By proving that a microscopic pathogen could be isolated, weakened, and used to train the body, Pasteur silenced the critics. It proved humanity was not helpless against microscopic threats.
Right, and he goes on to become one of the most important microbiologists in history. He discovers that microorganisms cause fermentation and disease. He develops the anthrax vaccine. He originates pasteurization, a process that literally bears his name and still protects our global food supply today.
It's everywhere.
But I want to pause on one specific achievement that often gets glossed over: his pioneering work in molecular asymmetry.
Yes. Molecular asymmetry is arguably one of his most profound discoveries, and it lays the groundwork for all his later biological work. Before he was working with viruses, Pasteur was studying crystals, specifically tartaric acid.
Okay.
He noticed that the molecules formed 2 distinct mirror image shapes, like a left hand and a right hand. They were chemically identical, but structurally mirrored.
Why does the shape of a crystal matter to the germ theory, though?
Because Pasteur discovered that living organisms selectively produce and interact with only one of these mirror image shapes, whereas synthetic chemical processes produce both equally.
Oh, interesting.
This proved that life has a specific, unique chemical signature. It established that the biological world operates under fundamentally different rules than raw chemistry. That realization is what drove him to hunt for the microscopic living organisms responsible for disease, rather than just blaming chemical imbalances in the body.
Wow. That one realization builds the foundation for the rabies vaccine, and the connection between Pasteur and the boy he saved didn't end in that laboratory.
No, it didn't.
As Joseph Meister grew older, Pasteur brought him back to Paris. He hired Joseph to work at his deluxe laboratory, assisting guests and giving tours. It's like a superhero hiring the very first kid they ever saved in an alley to run their headquarters.
It's a beautiful way to think about it. And it speaks to how Pasteur viewed his work. Joseph wasn't just a successful data point on a chart. He was a human being whose life was inextricably linked to Pasteur's.
Yeah.
And Joseph returned that loyalty. After Louis Pasteur died in 1895, Joseph Meister dedicated his life to being the caretaker of Pasteur's tomb at the Institut Pasteur in Paris.
He literally guarded the resting place of the man who gave him his life. If you visit today, there is a statue honoring Pasteur's work, and it depicts Joseph Meister being attacked by the dog. It immortalizes the violent collision of their destinies.
It was very powerful.
The timeline of the science is fascinating, but we need to pivot and focus on the underlying spiritual and moral truth that actually drove Pasteur's methodology in the first place. There is a direct, undeniable line from how he cared for animals to his ability to save a human being.
Yes, the source material roots this firmly in a profound moral reality about the value of life.
Right. The text points us directly to an absolute truth found in Luke 12.6. It is a lesson regarding sparrows, seemingly the most insignificant, common birds imaginable. The verse states, "Not one of them is forgotten before God." This establishes the divine value placed on even the smallest of living creatures.
And we see that divine concern mirrored explicitly in the way Pasteur conducted his research. Remember, before he ever treated a human, he spent years trying to ease the suffering of animals. He dedicated immense time and resources to curing 50 dogs of rabies.
So what does this all mean? We know God's concern for animal life was mirrored by Pasteur, but how does acknowledging the divine value of a dog or a sparrow actually lead to medical breakthroughs that save human lives? Can you connect the dots for us?
It changes the mechanism of how a scientist operates. If you view animal life as disposable or meaningless, you do not spend years meticulously studying how to cure a rabid dog. You put the dog down and move on.
Right.
But Pasteur had a fundamental posture of reverence. He honored the life of those dogs, and by caring enough to study them and heal them, he gained the exact knowledge of how the rabies virus travels through the nervous system. He perfected the method of desiccating spinal cords.
His compassion for the lesser creatures actually equipped him with the tools to save the greater.
Exactly. If he hadn't spent years honoring the lives of those 50 dogs, he would have had absolutely empty hands when a desperate mother showed up with her mauled 9-year-old son. Acknowledging the divine value of all life trains the human mind to protect it. And in the pursuit of protecting it, you unlock the breakthroughs that elevate all of humanity.
It fundamentally transforms science from a cold, mechanical data-gathering exercise into a deeply moral endeavor. The care we show to the least of these echoes upward. It dictates our capacity to care for each other.
That is exactly why the source material poses the vital question to us. Why is it important for us to do the same? Because honoring creation is the prerequisite to restoring it.
To bring this incredible journey full circle, we started on the 4th of July in 1885 with a horrific dog attack and a ticking biological clock. We saw a mother's unyielding desperation bypass the failures of traditional medicine.
Yeah.
And we witnessed an unlicensed chemist take a legally terrifying gamble with dried rabbit spinal cords, a gamble that fundamentally changed the landscape of modern medicine.
It required 13 grueling injections, 3 weeks of psychological agony, and an unwavering belief that a boy's life was worth risking everything for.
This isn't just a story confined to the 19th century. Every time you receive medical care today, every time you take an antibiotic, every time your children receive a vaccine, you are standing in the living legacy of Joseph Meister and Louis Pasteur. Their bravery is the absolute foundation of the medical safety we take for granted.
We are entirely the beneficiaries of their courage and their reverence for life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. We know from the sources as an absolute truth that God remembers every single sparrow. And we just explored how Pasteur's diligent, uncompromising care for animals gave him the precise biological tools he needed to save a dying child. So if one desperate act of compassion for living creatures can literally alter the trajectory of human history, what everyday opportunities to show that same uncompromising care are you walking past right now?
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.